From the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Monday, December 16th. I'm Abby Larico. As the cost of higher education continues to rise, there's a movement in Illinois to overhaul the way public colleges and universities are funded. Proponents concede it will be very expensive in the short term.
In the long view, every other thing that we fund, that our state funds, will be hard without it.
Why they think it's worth it, coming up after this news on The Gateway. The city of St. Louis is taking more steps to assess conditions at the city jail. This comes after prison reform advocates disrupted a Board of Aldermen meeting last month, calling for change. St. Louis Public Radio's Lucretia Wembley has more on the city's response to concerns about the 18 people who've died in custody since 2020.
Dozens of protesters stormed City Hall last month, demanding that the city review detainee grievances and provide better health care. In response, the city contracted with former St. Louis County Justice Services Director Doug Burris to identify specific improvements. Allison Gorga, an associate professor of criminology at Webster University, says detainees have a constitutional right to health care.
Sometimes officers don't understand health issues. They sometimes don't care if somebody has a medical problem or that they're understaffed. Delivering a sick call to medical is less important.
Meanwhile, Commissioner of Corrections Jennifer Clemens Abdullah returned to work last week after taking a leave of absence in September. I'm Lucretia Wembley, St. Louis Public Radio.
7 people are now graduates of a program that aims to keep those with weapons-related convictions from returning to prison. St. Louis Public Radio's Aula Kuziz reports from the November ceremony.
In a Missouri Circuit courtroom, people cheered as graduates of the St. Louis Police Partnership Program received certificates. The graduates, who are on parole or probation, celebrated the completion of a program that helped them avoid rearrest. 22-year-old Eugene Hightower was in the program for a little over a year. He says officers visited him every month and helped him get jobs.
Something I learned myself was that it was actually helpful, and it was a lot of resources because I got more opportunities to do a lot of things that I wasn't able to do at first.
This program was the focus of a University of Missouri-St. Louis study, which found that the one-on-one approach is a promising way to reduce criminal behavior. I'm Aula Kuziz, St. Louis Public Radio.
Downtown St. Louis is set to get a new food hall. It's part of a push by developer Oliver Properties to bring more retail to the neighborhood. The developer plans to turn the 9,000-square-foot former Copia restaurant into a space with multiple food operators. Alex Oliver is the owner of Oliver Properties, which also owns 400 apartments in surrounding buildings.
We're really intentionally looking at, okay, what type of retail activation is going to be great for the street, great for our residents' experience, great for, turning this into more of a neighborhood community, not just, how do we optimize our retail rent?
Oliver says a food hall was always his preference for the space, and he's been seeking operating partners who will match that vision. He says his firm has also purchased the ground floor condos of different buildings along Washington Avenue to create a more unified retail experience along the street. A group of mayors is launching a new call for an overarching legal framework for the Mississippi River. St. Louis Public Radio's Kate Grumke has this.
Some mayors along the Mississippi River think their cities would benefit from a compact. That's a legal framework for sharing the river. Other major water systems like the Great Lakes and Colorado River Basin have compacts, but the Mississippi does not. St. Louis Mayor Tashara Jones says this could be a way to safeguard the Mississippi.
What I'd like to see is a compact that protects this natural resource for many, many years to come, that develops some preventative measures.
The Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative is organizing the call for a legal agreement. It's an association of leaders of about 100 communities along the river. I'm Kate Grumke, St. Louis Public Radio.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is calling on lawmakers to pass a bill that would regulate hemp-derived THC products. That includes ones with Delta-8. Capital News Illinois reports Delta-8 is a psychoactive hemp-derived substance with concentrated amounts of THC. The bill would create a system for labeling, licensing, and taxing hemp products similar to the state's cannabis regulations. Many products with Delta-8 that look like candy, cookies, and chips are being sold in gas stations and convenience stores. Governor Pritzker says the industry is using deceptive advertising tactics to market these products to minors.
These products have an intoxicating effect. often to dangerous levels. They're untested and unregulated and are widely available and accessible to young people.
The legislation also says only licensed dispensaries would be able to sell hemp products with THC. The bill passed the Senate in May but never moved in the House. State representatives will have the opportunity to take up the issue during their lame duck session in January. 6 airlines have submitted proposals to be the next carrier at Quincy Regional Airport, and tonight the public is invited to a hearing to consider the options. This follows years of frustration with the airport's only provider, Southern Airways Express, including frequent delays and mechanical issues. Mayor Mike Trope told STLPR that the airline has yet to transport even half the expected number of annual passengers. Quincy Regional is one of about 100 airports in the continental U.S. that's operating under a federally subsidized program designed to keep airlines operating in smaller cities. Southern Airways Express is under contract with the airport through 2026, but the Department of Transportation is allowing the city to seek a replacement. The meeting begins in the City Hall Council chambers at 5 p.m. A new report shows Illinois' state worker pension systems are still woefully underfunded, but they're getting better. Alex Stegman has more.
The state's carrying around $144 billion in unfunded pension liabilities as of June 30th, when the last fiscal year ended. That's the second highest total ever. But the overall pension funding ratio is getting better, due in part to a new, less expensive tier of benefits that went into effect for new employees in 2011, called Tier 2. The Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability says the state has 46% of what it needs to fully fund retiree benefits. That's up from about 38% less than 10 years ago. It's unclear whether that's going to continue, though, because lawmakers might sweeten Tier 2 benefits to at least bring them in line with federal requirements. The pension systems under current law need to be 90% funded by 2045. I'm Alex Stegman.
The cost of college has been on the rise for some time, and it's had a particularly big impact on families in Illinois. But now a group of politicians and advocates in the state have a plan to change that. Lisa Kurian Phillip breaks down how it would work.
The name of the legislation is extremely unsexy. It has words like adequate and equitable in it. But people like Christian Perry are psyched about what it could do. He's from the advocacy group Partnership for College Completion.
Even if you have, younger babies like yourself or a teenager like I do, the point of this work is to ensure that, they enter into a different higher education landscape than the one that you and I inherited.
The one that he and I inherited, it sucks. And that's in part because Illinois has no system for how it funds its public universities. College leaders just go to Springfield to beg for money and cross their fingers they get it. And they often have not. Since 2000, state spending on higher education has been cut in half. That's right, half. It used to be that state funding made up most of a public university's revenue. Now, schools have to rely on tuition for the majority of their money.
The state disinvestment has created pressures for these universities to raise their tuition to levels that their student populations just could not afford.
Mike Abramson is a researcher at the Partnership for College Completion.
It really put them in an impossible spot.
So how are legislators trying to fix it? With math. They want to use a formula to distribute funds. It would calculate the minimum each school needs to educate the particular kinds of students it serves. More money would be set aside for low-income, first-generation, and racially marginalized students. Researcher Nick Lee says the formula would take Illinois from one of the worst at funding higher education to a model for other states to emulate.
I think it does a great job of lifting up and shedding light on the fact of it costs different amounts of money to educate different students and to educate them in different programs and different institution types.
Okay, this all sounds super wonky. So let's talk about what this might look like in real life. I want to take you to Chicago State University on the city's south side. It's the only public university in Illinois with a predominantly Black student body. Christian Perry, that first guy you heard from, he grew up nearby.
A parent now with a 7-year-old maybe wouldn't look at Chicago State because of if they drove past it, they see a stop sign that might be crooked and, a little bit of flooding due to the bad infrastructure.
Over the years, the state has put less and less money into the school. And Chicago State's students aren't able to pay much more to make up the difference. Most come from families that qualify as low income. That's meant their college has fewer resources to serve students. That's meant fewer students are enrolling, which has meant fewer tuition dollars. It's a downward spiral. Perry says if the formula is done right, the school could be restored to what it was like when his grandfather went there in the 70s.
10 years from now, that campus could look radically different. It could be buzzing and humming with more students, where you might feel a little bit more comfortable trying to strong arm your baby to stay home, right? And go to Chicago State because the amenities and what they can offer.
The problem is, this would all be really expensive. Researchers estimate that fully funding the formula will require jacking up higher education spending by $1.4 billion in taxpayer dollars over the next decade. But Abramson, the researcher, says the payoff would be many times that, because people with college degrees can contribute more to the local economy.
In the short view of this, the funding piece is hard, right? In the long view, every other thing that we fund, that our state funds, will be hard without it.
Abramson estimates students who get college degrees as a result would pay more than $6 billion in state taxes over their lifetimes.
That was Lisa Kurian Phillip reporting from member station WBEZ in Chicago. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a listener-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Abby Larico, and from the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this has been The Gateway.